Hi, it's Dave. When I first got married many years ago, my wife was shocked at how fast I could read. I would take 3 or 4 books and read them within an hour, and my wife was flabbergasted. In fact, she was offended. In this video, I'm going to share the power of reading super fast and how it's changed my life. First off, in this video, I'm not going to share all the fine details on how to exactly read super fast, but rather I want to give a bigger picture, an overview, and I want to share some of the building blocks. But more importantly, I want to share the benefits and the power of reading super fast, because I think a lot of us need the motivation. We need a reason to want to read fast, and that's kind of the point of this first video. In the comment section below, go ahead and ask your questions, and I'll try to answer as many as I can in future videos. Personally, I think reading super fast is one of the most important skills in life. And for me personally, I was a late bloomer. Growing up as a kid, I hated reading. I just literally didn't read much. I'd rather be outside playing sports or listening to the radio. I would listen to hours of sports talk radio and business talk radio, even as a kid like 12 or 13 years old. And it wasn't until my sophomore year in college when I experienced a turning point in terms of reading. I was in my history class and the professor at the beginning of the course shared some advice. He said, "In these history classes, we're giving you too much reading. In other words, if you read at a normal pace, you're not going to be able to finish all the reading we give you." And he says, that's intentional. We give you more reading than you can handle. The only way you can actually handle all the reading we give you is to improve your reading skills and to read very fast. Now, he didn't go into much detail, but he kind of made that the big point of his first lecture in class was, you've got to learn how to read fast, and that's the whole point. So I took the professor's words to heart, and I started to think, how can I improve my reading speed? So what I did was, let's say for my history class, it's a 4-unit class, and on average, there was about 250 pages of reading. I personally only wanted to spend about 4 hours of study time for that entire 4-unit class, because I had a personal principle. I only wanted to spend 1 hour of study time per 1 unit of class. So I had to fit the 250 pages of reading all within 4 hours of study time. And when I calculated the numbers, it worked out to be about 1 page per minute or 60 pages per hour. So in the beginning, I would run a clock, a stopwatch for 60 minutes. And then I would take the 60 pages I would have to read, and I would just make sure that I would read 1 page per minute at least and finish the whole entire 60 pages of usually academic reading within 1 hour. At first, it was difficult and it was tedious and it was a big chore. But after time, I got pretty good at it, and I was able to read consistently at least 1 page per minute, no matter what the reading was. And as I got better and better at it, I developed a key skill. And the key skill was identifying the core argument or thesis of that article or book very quickly, and then identifying all the supporting arguments for that main thesis. And everything else for that book turns out to be facts or supporting kind of evidence to kind of bolster that main argument and the supporting arguments. This type of reading allowed me to read every single page of every single class that I enrolled in for the rest of my college time. And it allowed me to breeze through my classes because I understood all of the reading very clearly. In fact, I graduated honors in my university all with just studying 1 hour per unit of class. By the time I graduated college, my reading speed had increased probably about to 100 pages per hour or so, even with dense academic stuff. And the great thing about my major in college was it was multidisciplinary. I had to learn about government and politics and economy and international relations and history and even languages. And it was just a broad type of major where I had an immense amount of opportunity to read across a lot of disciplines. Now, after I graduated college, this super fast kind of reading skill became kind of a superpower because I was able to quickly absorb and intake a lot of information. Books were no longer a chore or a duty, but rather they were an opportunity that I could read fast and quickly learn about a topic or an area of interest. And the key is I would first try to identify the main core argument or thesis that this author is making and its main supporting arguments. And from that, I could fill out the rest of the book very quickly with the rest of the stories and facts of the book. After college, I took a rather non-traditional career path. I expanded my areas of interest, and I read tons of books on philosophy and anthropology and sociology and psychology and business and technology, and I really just expanded all my areas of interest. I even went into languages and linguistics and understanding cultures and values and even worldviews. And it was fascinating to learn new things because I could learn them very fast. And all along this time, I developed another skill, which I consider kind of a superpower skill. And the skill is the ability to discern the quality of what you read. Out of 100 books, a lot of times people think, oh, this author has a PhD, or this author is an expert on this topic, therefore I should listen and they know more than me, and therefore they have a lot to give. However, after reading so much, I started to see that there are really just a few books out of 100 books that have a depth and a clarity and a quality to them that really is timeless. Most books, the authors don't have a clear grasp and a deep grasp on their topic or understanding. Rather, they use complex arguments and complexity to try to support a very kind of more shallow argument and view on their topic or their argument. Over time, as I picked this up, I started to get better at discerning how well a person knows and how deep a person knows their topic and their stuff. If a person is able to say something and explain something so clearly and so simply, yet it's so profound and has a deep and wide application, that's a good sign that this person actually knows what they're talking about. Another sign a person knows what they're talking about is if they could talk about a wide range of topics and cross-apply their understanding to even other topics, but yet speak yet so simply and so clearly, but yet so profoundly. Like the application is just so wide. And from this knowledge and skill, I was able to quickly identify the shallow books, the rambling books, the super complex books that don't have that essence of truth and wisdom. And on the flip side, I was able to identify the books that had that depth of clarity and wisdom. Several years out of college, I was able to refine these reading skills, and I would sit down somewhere and I would take 5 books or so on a topic, and I would read 5 books within an hour. Out of the 5 books, 3 or 4 of the books would be kind of rambling books, not very high quality, but I would find probably one book that was rather interesting and it would actually be very insightful. For a period of 6 or 7 years, I would actually go to Barnes and Nobles with a friend every Monday afternoon. I personally would head to the business and investing section, and I would take 10 or so books out of that section, and I would sit down at the coffee table and I would just read those 10 books within 2 or 3 hours. I literally would finish all the books. And I did that for years and years. For 6 or 7 years, I would just every week, every Monday, I would just go through about 10 books within 2 or 3 hours on a Monday afternoon. And that wasn't my only reading. It was just kind of like a dedicated time where I would just go and hang out with a friend and read a ton of books. Another habit I developed with reading was if I would overhear someone talking about a book or mention a book in any way, I would just quickly order that book no matter what, no questions asked. And I would just go ahead and read that book very quickly. And so anything that anyone would talk about and mention a book, I thought that that was a significant sign that that book actually had some depth, and that would be an indicator for me to purchase and read that book. Now, the benefits of reading super fast is quite immense. And I can go on hours and hours on the benefits personally in my life because the benefits spawn a wide range of areas and topics in my life. However, since I'm kind of talking mostly about investing in this channel, I want to talk about specifically on the benefits of reading super fast regarding having an advantage in gaining investing skills. To illustrate this point, I found a clip by Warren Buffett. He was speaking at Georgetown University in 2013, sharing about his history with books. Here's the clip.
My dad originally was in the investment business. He really wasn't very interested in it, but I would go down on Saturday morning and he had these books there in the office, and I read all those, and then I went to the Omaha Public Library, and I read every book on investments in the Omaha Public Library by the time we moved to Washington. And then when we got here, I had the Library of Congress.
Did you get through all those?
Oh, I read everything, and I just found it fascinating, and incidentally, I find it fascinating today. I mean, it's an activity. You know, if you're a baseball player or something, you know, your legs may go or something. Well, my legs have long gone, but it doesn't make any difference in what I do. So it's I literally have as much. I always have had fun working, but I have as much fun now as I've ever had in my life. I mean, I work with people I love doing what I love, and it just doesn't get any better than that.
What I found fascinating about the clip was that Warren Buffett, at an early age, he had this prolific reading period where he was just soaking up every single book on investing and business that he could find. And I think that kind of set the foundation for Warren Buffett, where he could establish his own foundation of understanding and his own foundation of critical thinking. I think that's one of the reasons why I find Warren Buffett kind of interesting. Whereas I don't agree with everything Buffett says, I think he does have some insights where he can go against the flow and against traditional thinking. But that's because he's developed his own foundation of understanding, and he can understand business and investing at a deeper level than most people can. You see, the reason why reading super fast and reading a ton of business and investing books and going deep in understanding is important is this. See, business is super complex, and a lot of times people tend to oversimplify business. They think, oh yeah, it's just about making money, or it's just about having a good idea, or it's just about beating out your competition, all this stuff. However, there's so much complexity with business. Like for example, the management style, the management values, the vision, their strategy. Look at the product itself. Look at the pace of innovation. Look at the productivity of its workers, how efficient is the company. Look at the market size. Look at the technology and the pace of technology. Look at marketing and promotion and the message that the company gives. There's so many facets. And then there's a financial facet with how much money is invested and the profit and the return and the margins and the growth rate. And there's so many complex factors involved in a business. And I think a lot of people, because it's such a complex field, they tend to shy away from it, or they tend to gravitate to an oversimplified explanation of what makes a business successful. However, this oversimplification and this reductionism of what business is really hurts the investing mindset, because with that, you're prone to making big mistakes and you're prone to missing out on what's really going on with business. Sometimes people feel like when they're facing a very overwhelming topic, they tend to be intimidated by the topic and they kind of get paralyzed and they don't know what to do. However, with the skill of reading super fast, you've got this superpower now. You could read hundreds, if not thousands of books on that topic and get up to speed super fast. And this is in a way kind of an empowerment to learn and to master any topic or any field of interest. What's interesting with my story personally is that thousands and thousands of books I've read on non-business topics actually give me a framework and a foundation to understand the world at large outside of business, to understand culture and people and psychology and sociology and philosophy and just different fields that actually are immensely important. But also the thousands of books or so that I've read on business and investing itself gives me my own foundation where I can make up my own decisions and create my own framework on how to understand a business and its chances of success. Now, I don't put these artificial rules on my life in terms of reading. Like some people want to read 20 books a year or 50 books a year and they kind of force themselves to read. But for me, reading is a joy, I want to read whatever I want to read. And books isn't the only thing I learn from. There are a multitude of things that I learn from, including articles and podcasts and YouTube videos, etc. And sometimes I think by people setting kind of like the artificial goal of reading 20 books a year or something might be kind of missing the point. Because I think if you actually had a bigger goal of mastering a topic, of really gaining insight on something, and you learned the skill of reading super fast, then even if without having that goal, you would probably read hundreds of books a year rather than the 20 books that maybe you're currently reading. All right, let me give a closing story. So when I first got married, this was many years ago, my wife and I would sometimes go to a Barnes & Noble. Now this was after I had been reading a stack of 10 books in like a couple hours for years and years. And I took my wife, several times to Barnes & Nobles, and I would take 4 or 5 books and she would sit down with one book. And in a period of an hour, I would read, all the 4 or 5 books. It was just really easy and natural for me. In a period of an hour, she would be still stuck on the second chapter of the first book that she picked up. And she would get so angry and pissed off at me. She would say, Dave, you're not reading any of that stuff. And it offended her. It deeply offended her. And especially my wife has kind of an English background, like a literature background. And so for me to read 4 or 5 books within an hour was deeply offensive for her. And I remember she would quiz me on some of these books. She'd be like, what is this book saying? And what is this? And all this stuff. And she had the hardest time accepting that, yeah, I could actually read and understand these books within that short period of time. The funny thing is I would actually pass her tests. I would actually be able to understand these books, and she was just shocked. And for a few years, she just was shocked and she kind of was in denial. She wouldn't accept the reality that I could actually read that fast. A few years pass and then she starts to ask, Dave, so how do you read that fast? What are you doing? And can you teach me how to read that fast? And so I'm like, sure, let's sit down. I'll teach you what I'm doing. So we go through, different skills and different tactics. And I show her what I'm doing and how I'm reading. And she starts to pick up the skill slowly. And it takes time, but fast forward, many years later, and now she's actually reading quite fast. And it's a super empowering skill for her. She could sit down, when our kids take a bath or something, and in 20 minutes or so, she goes through a book. And it was something that she couldn't fathom just 10 or 15 years ago or so, but now she's actually holding that skill. It might not be as fast as what I could do because I've had many decades of that training, but for her, she's on the path to reading super fast, and she's enjoying the process and just improving the amount of information and amount of wisdom that she's encountering. And it's becoming a life-changing process for her as well. The cool thing about reading super fast is a couple things. First is you have a greater probability of actually catching the amazing gems of wisdom and truth that are out there. But also, learning tends to have a compound effect, meaning as I learn more things and I learn more insights and wisdom, I take those and put them in a foundation of my understanding and view of the world. And now this becomes a toolbox in how I can learn other things. And that's why all my past reading, in fact, helps me read even faster and at a deeper level and to soak in more. And all of that reading that I've done in the past and all of the foundation that I've set allows me to pick up a book right now and to not just read it super fast, but to intake far more than what I could intake if I had a less of a foundation or less of a breadth of understanding and knowledge. And this compound effect of learning just continues to grow and grow and grow. If you have a high school kid who's going into college, like the number one thing that I think the kid needs to learn is to learn how to read super fast. Not just going through the motions, but actually how to understand. And if they could read super fast, like 10 times faster than anyone else in their class, like they're gonna have a superpower advantage. They're gonna breeze through college, and then they're gonna be able to explore and find new things and explore new areas where other kids are just struggling to keep up with their homework and their classes. Anyways, I know I can go on hours and hours on this topic of reading super fast, but in this kind of first primer with you guys, I just wanna share more of the benefits and the power of reading super fast and apply it a bit to investing. If you have questions or comments, please ask them, and that will kind of give me some questions where I can answer in the future about reading super fast. And who knows, maybe I can put this all together into a workshop or so, and it could be a great resource for you, but also maybe for your kids and for other people you know. All right, for the rest of this video, I'm going to answer some questions from viewers. This first question is in response to a video where I talked about how to research a company that you're looking to invest in. Michael Ortega says, you have to get inside the mind of the CEO. You must learn each and every move. You must be able to smell the food they are 10 years ago. You must be able to see their first baby steps. You must be able to learn the beginning of their existence. Happy face. I love this guy, but jokes aside, since this is a joke, you must listen to this man. That's a fact. All right, this comment is actually referring to kind of some of my comments where I talk about when you research a company, you've got to get into the mind of the CEO, understand their thinking, get to the point where you understand their business and their thoughts and their strategy so well that you're able to almost complete their next sentences in regards to their company or product. Another viewer actually posted a comment, said it's like the Vulcan mind meld, you know, like when you get into the thoughts of the other person. And there's actually some truth to this. And while all of this kind of sounds funny, there is actually a ring of truth to this. When you can get into the psychology and the mind of the CEO and you understand their strategy and how they view their competitors and how they view their own product, that gives you a certain amount of advantage to understand the company. And I think research often is underrated. Like people think that, oh, a stock pick by some, stock picking service or something, like they just want the shortcut. They just want this fast way to just pick a stock, right? Because it's so easy to just buy a stock and then you hope the stock will go up and you make some money. Like people are so wired to just wanting this like quick way to make money. It's like a casino or something. However, research is immensely underrated. With research and through understanding people, you could actually unlock a lot of understanding with the product or company. Another type of research that's underrated is understanding the product owners, like getting into their mind. Why are they buying this product? How do they think of the competition? How do they think of other companies? And by getting into the mind of product owners, by actually talking with them and interviewing and sitting down with them and spending time with them, but even better, you becoming a product owner, you start to enter a different level of understanding with that company. And that's why I actually consider a company like Tesla in a different category than another company. Let's say you're more distant in terms of product. With Tesla, for example, if you're a product owner, like there's an immense amount of intimacy with that company and the product. You understand that product in and out, and you understand other product owners because you're part of that camaraderie. And in terms of Tesla as well, you start to understand Elon Musk, the CEO. He's being interviewed. You understand, you watch him and listen to him. So there's an immense amount of advantage you get with Tesla because you're a product owner, but more specifically also because the impact is so deep. Meaning what Tesla is doing with a car right now is just going to amplify its effects 5, 10, 15 years from now. Tesla, I think, is going to be part of the daily culture. It's going to enter the culture like a Google or an Apple or an Amazon. Everyone's going to know about a Tesla, and news about Tesla will become more and more mainstream. compare this with an enterprise company in an industry, let's say that you're not very familiar with or that you're not working in yourself. There's a distance and there's a gap of understanding where you're not a user of that product, so you don't really understand that product or the product owners. And so that gap of understanding, sure, you could try to overcome it through research and understanding, but still it's a disadvantage. And that's why I think there's some type of extra margin of safety when you hit the big one, the big generational winner that enters culture with a product that's so dominant that you can actually easily monitor that product and that company. It's just a great advantage to have. And that's why I think investing long-term in these generational companies is underrated. And when you have a person who comes along and does like short-term trading and thinks the way to play Tesla is to go in and out of Tesla, I kind of just disagree with that whole approach, because I think it's a unique opportunity. It's a long-term opportunity that if you find a 10x generational company, that you hold on and you stick with it. All right, the next question is from RZ. It says, I've already been seeing a lot of hype around StarLink on forums ever since it was announced. What do you do if the IPO attracts a lot of unsophisticated retail investors that drive price too high? Do you buy in at any price and just have to wait for company valuation to catch up? Or do you set a max price and not buy unless you can buy under that price, even if it means waiting if or when the price drops after initial flurry of buying? All right, this is a tough one because yeah, StarLink can, bring a lot of enthusiasm and hype from people. And in a lot of ways, the StarLink business model is quite straightforward. It's kind of like put up satellites, get satellite internet going, and people pay a monthly subscription fee. And so in some ways, because it's such a straightforward product, and because by the time they go IPO also, they'll have the product out and running. And so it won't be, I think, a huge leap of faith. And so yeah, there could be a lot of enthusiasm and hype for StarLink IPO. The result is that could boost up the IPO price, and it could make getting into StarLink a little bit more risky in terms of its potential future returns. The higher StarLink IPOs at in terms of its stock price, the more difficult it is going to be to do a 10x valuation, let's say within 5 or 10 years. So personally, what I'm doing is I'm setting my own forecasts going 3 to 5 years out, saying, okay, what are the price ranges of valuation that I expect from this stock? And these price valuations are set based upon the revenue projections, the margin projections, and the profit projections from StarLink. And so what's going to be important is their S1 filing when they go IPO. And that's when they're going to have to release a lot of their figures. Let's say with StarLink, I don't see that 10x potential because let's say IPO too high, and I see more of a 5x potential of 5 or 10 years. I might still invest some into the company, maybe not, a full amount that I would have invested, but at least have something in it because it's kind of a fascinating company. I mean, we already know the CEO fairly well with his exposure with Tesla and etc. And the product itself and the business model and the future ahead for StarLink actually is very fascinating. And so it's something that I probably want at least some piece of it. The next question is from 2Music Lover. He says, just an amazing post. I resonated with the way you think in your recent posts, but this one connected much more thoroughly. I hope that you do a follow through with your 20 to 40 hours bootcamp. I'm in a different industry than yours, but like what you're striving for. I'm in the business of transforming paradigms. I do not mean paradigm in the overused sense of the word, but in the sense of Thomas Kuhn's paradigm shift, where one's fundamental worldview is shifted from the ground up. In the end, I find that for what I'm called to do, I need 32 to 35 hours, and I've been holding these 4 to 5 day boot camps across different cultures. The end goal and result is that once those who are open to transformation goes through the intense process, they can never unsee what they now see for the rest of their lives. I'm planning to have my sons watch your videos, and if you have the boot camp, I'd love to send them. My goal really is less about what you can teach about business analysis, but more to learn how you think. Bravo, well done, thank you. 2Music Lover, thanks for the comment. I totally agree with you here. What's more important than the actual how people view Tesla or business analysis is really how you think and how you process information and the judgments and conclusions you get to. But in order to get to a judgment or conclusion, there's a certain process that you go through. And a lot of people are habituated and they're into this rut, this habit that they've established from very early on, from when they're just a little kid until now, where they don't question things. They just go with the rules or the norm or the herd or what the cultural values of the day is. And so in a lot of ways, they're stuck in this box and they don't even think they're in the box because they don't think the box can be broken. But if you're able to break the box, then you're able to open up a whole new world of understanding and insight, and you can see things from so many different angles. In a lot of ways, I think a lot of people in society, they've learned compliance from a very young age. Like, for example, you take a 3 or 4-year-olds, stick them in a daycare or preschool, and the first thing they learn is compliance. They learn how to behave, how to not upset someone else's expectations. And so the game becomes like, how can I just work and behave within these certain narrow guidelines, right? And this also pertains to schooling later on, where you have to raise your hand when you ask a question, and challenging authority becomes something that's not very encouraged. So by the time you get out of school, you are ingrained with compliance. You're ingrained with following. You're ingrained with passivity, right? You don't have this habit of questioning, of digging deeper, of actually poking holes, right? Regardless of their background, regardless of their credential, regardless of their authority position, right? You are able to dive deep in and actually find the reality and truth of things. You know, people in general just don't have those type of skills when they graduate school. And in fact, they have the opposite skills, right? The opposite skills of compliance, right? The opposite skills of just being told what to do and only doing what you're told. And that type of thinking will get people stuck. They're just in this box, and a lot of times they feel they can't get out. And if they want to learn something or really discover something, it's very difficult. One example is with books. Oftentimes when people read a book, they're reading a book just like the author so-called intended the person to read it. So a lot of times people are reading like very slowly, like as they talk, and they read every single page that way. And it takes them days and days, if not weeks or a month. I recently overheard someone saying like they read 1 or 2 books per year, and that's their goal. They're so ingrained in this boxed system that they need to read a book like slowly and understand every sentence. That's a construct, and that's a box. I mean, it might be the way the author himself or herself wants you to read the book, but it doesn't mean you need to read it like that, right? Sometimes we need to take a step back and say, okay, how should I read a book, right? Who's saying that I should take 10 hours to read this book, right? And that's like a question mark that starts to poke the hole in the box that a person is in. And that's why like sometimes when a person like me says, hey, I could read 5 books in an hour, people just, first off, they won't believe me that I can read that. And then second, they go, oh, obviously you don't understand what you're reading. Or third, it must be a scam. Like they're just still in that box. They don't even consider the possibility of like, wait a minute, let's unravel this box for a minute and say, wait a minute, maybe there's a completely different way to read a book. And maybe you can actually absorb more that way. You know, maybe you could do 100x effective reading if you did it a different way. A lot of times people, their framework of understanding their views won't allow them to even question that and even to unravel that box. And this happens like so often in so many ways and in so many views. While my channel is about so-called investing, more importantly, actually, I think it's about thinking deeper. It's about questioning things. It's about finding what's real and what's true and training your mind to poke holes in that box and to find actually new ways of understanding and thinking. Anyways, I hope you liked this video. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Add a comment. Please ask me about this, super fast reading method. Ask me questions about methodology, about reasons to do so, about whatever you'd like, and I'll go ahead and I'll try to maybe gather those questions for another video too. Or who knows, maybe it'll be a series of video, or it might end up like a boot camp where I can go for an extended time and actually teach like 10 hours on how to read super fast. I think it'll be mind-blowing. I would love to take some younger youth who maybe haven't been so ingrained with how to read yet. Maybe they've just been turned off by books, and I'd love to take them through like a 10-hour course, sit them down, make it fun, make it interesting, teach them the actual skills to do that before, let's say, they go to college, and see the difference that it makes in their life, not just for college, but for the rest of their entire life. Anyways, it's my hope that through these videos, people can start poking holes in the box, in the construct that society kind of molds and shapes our thinking. And by poking these holes, we can maybe unravel the box to discover something completely mind-shattering of how we can approach and understand the world. Anyways, have a great day, and we'll see you in my next video. Thanks.